Good evening, everyone. I thank Asia Society and the entire team for inviting me and my fellow panelists for this very important discussion. You know, India as a nation has given the world gems of wisdom such as yoga, Veda, and most importantly, the zero. This is because once upon a time we valued taking intellectual risks, exploration, imagination, and rigor. We prioritized applications of innate intelligence, pursuit of wisdom, and curiosity over reproduction of rote subject matter. But today, we take pride in being India's biggest back office operation. The new definition of MBAs is Mahabevakoof Admi. Something is fundamentally wrong in our system. Imagine we have 500 million young people, about under the age of 35, most of whom are either unemployed, underemployed, or more dangerously, unemployable. Just imagine what will happen. Companies have capital, companies have business ideas, but don't have people to execute it. One of my clients went on to say that with the way things are going, robots might become more humans than humans themselves. And this is because our education system actually programs us to think within set frameworks instead of breaking away from them. Ironically, employers want people who actually don't reproduce knowledge but are able to think on their own, solve on their own, understand emotions and reciprocate emotions in the workplace setting. Unemployability and the skill gap that we are facing today is a looming socioeconomic and humanitarian crisis. And how to come out of it is what my fellow panelists and I, along with you, aim to explore today. I would like to request Dr. Goel to make a short presentation about his work with Bosch, followed by a presentation by Mrs. Banerjee, and then we'll have a free-flowing discussion. Thank you. Thank you.
My co-panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to be here today. My name is Dr. O.P. Goel, work for the company called Bosch for last 23 years. This company was started by one Mr. Robert Bosch. This was his startup when he was at the age of 25. 1886 is the time when he started this. He expired in 1942. By the time this company was doing business in about 150 countries. Now the turnover of the group is about 78 billion last year. About 4 lakh or little more than 4 lakh people work globally. The company applies for about 13 patents every day. Perhaps that is why it is 133-year-old. We are told that the average age of a Fortune 500 company is about 45 years. So if they are surviving for 133 years, then must be doing something different, and this is one of those different things what they do. Perhaps there's no automotive manufacturer on the earth who does not buy something or the other from Bosch. So this is the biggest auto component manufacturing company in the world, including Japan, although there were time of rivalry between Japan and Germany. But there was time when few of the Japanese manufacturers was not buying from them, but then later started. Now Toyota is also one of the important customer apart from Honda and others. The company spent about 8% of the sale on R&D. Many companies are not able to spend even 8% of the profit. The other interesting thing is Mr. Robert Bosch decided to give away the company when I say 92% of it, to a charitable organization. So he wrote in his will that my family will not need so much when I'm no more. So 92% should go to the society, to the society back through an Robert Bosch Foundation, or in Germany what they call it as Robert Bosch Stiftung. 7% is enough for my family, 1% to meet the administrative expenses. So that's the constitution which is being followed now after he expired in 1942. In India, the first business of Bosch started in 1922 with the import of spark plug in Kolkata. The headquarters of the company is in Bangalore. The company started in 1952. Now there are 13 companies, 18 factories. More or less, majority of them are in south, but then we also have one in north, which is in Jaipur. We have one also in Nashik. Coming to today's topic, that's the skill development. We talk a lot about German VET dual apprenticeship model. I think there's no forum, whether it's government or industry, where we don't end up discussing about why the German VET dual system cannot be implemented in India. This is one center which started in 1961 in Bangalore, the same year when the Apprentices Act came into the being in India. And this VET dual system is being practiced there in letter and in split. While the capacity is small, we take 60 apprentices every year. They come after 10 years of schooling. They are there for 3 years because Germans like 3-year apprenticeship. They don't like 1 year or 2 year. We have only trained about 5,000 apprentices so far there over about 57 years. But 1/4 of them work abroad. Some of them work for Bosch, and those who joined Bosch after the apprenticeship training, they wait for retirement. They don't change companies. Some of them have actually rose to the level of general manager, senior general manager also. Some of them work for the competitors. Some of the PSUs have a reservation for a Bosch apprentice, that if you complete 3-year program from there, come and join us, we will pay you much more than what Bosch can pay. We will also give a house which Bosch doesn't give. So this model, we call it as career-oriented long-term model. Numbers are small. You are able to produce the technicians who have the highest level of the skills which are needed by the industry, but then scale is a problem. You can't scale it up to the level the country needs. We had the honor of receiving the Prime Minister to the center. Last time when Angela Merkel came, she came last month also, but prior to that, in 2015 when she came, PMO, the people in the Prime Minister's office asked Mr. Modi, you are scheduled to meet Angela Merkel in Bangalore, so where would you like to meet? He said, I'll meet in Bosch Vocational Center. So both of them came to the center. They wanted to explore how the Indian youth, we have quite a lot of them, and the German skilling system can be combined together to solve some of the problems of India and possibly of Germany and also beyond these two countries. The training center has been declared as the best training establishment by the President of India some 54 times. We see one certificate on the right hand side. So if you come to the center, you will possibly see a wall full of these certificates starting from 1967 as the first time when it came from the Prime Minister's office, and it continues to keep coming. 245 apprentices have won the gold medals in the examinations or the competitions conducted by the Ministry of Skill Development. It started with the earlier ministry when as a country we didn't have the skill ministry. It only came in 2014. Oh, I thought I'd switched it off, I'm sorry. So the ministry conducts a competition for the apprentices at the national level, and those in a particular trade who is the topper in the country gets a gold medal. So 245 of these the apprentices from this center have won the gold medals. So this is one model, what we call it as long-term career-oriented model. The second model, as Ms. Chan said, is a bridge. This is a short-term job-oriented program, which we started in 2013. When the CSR Act was being discussed in the government, we were also discussing this within Bosch as to what we should be doing with this 2%, although the 92% of the money is anyway going to the charity through the charitable organization, but you still have to abide by the law, so you have to keep the 2% aside before you declare the dividend. So how should we use it? So the easy decision was that we seem to be knowing how to do vocational training in the country, so why don't you also do more of it? But not the same model, which will produce these world-class technicians, and many of them will go abroad. From the first model, we have 600 ex-apprentices of the center who work in Sydney. The biggest alumni association is in Sydney. second biggest in Melbourne, third biggest in Bangalore, all the centers in Bangalore. So we said we don't want to produce now these technicians more who will go abroad, but we want somebody to solve the country's problem here. So we devised this 3 months model on soft skills to prepare these youth for entry-level jobs in the service industry in India. 2 months training happens in the classroom, 1 month on the job. First batch was started in January 2013. Today, as we talk, we run this in 272 centers across the country. We actually had never thought that we will grow big. We were thinking that we will start few centers in around Bangalore and maybe train few hundred these youth and they will get jobs and we'll feel happy about it. But then the needs started coming from all the states. We earlier were thinking that we being an automotive company, we will only produce this skill contingent for the automobile dealerships, car dealership, two-wheeler dealership, etc. But then the requirements started coming from retail industry, BPO, where we don't have the domain knowledge as a company. But then we then tied up with few of these companies and developed some domain-specific modules with them. Now we have 13 job roles for 7 industries through which we train these people. 100% employment. Until about 2 years before, the condition was that only those who fail in class 12th or 11th can come into the bridge program. So this was not offered to those who pass by design. Perhaps the only program in the country where the condition was that if you are pass, we want you to go to the higher education and don't come here. But then some of the youth started approaching and saying, well, I have passed, but then I'm not getting a job, so why don't you allow me to come? And not only the 12th pass, but also the graduates now we have been started taking some of them. 26,000 of them have been trained and employed so far with 100% employment. At least from our side, we ensure that 100% of them get a job. Some of them don't take up a job, is a different thing. About 20% of them don't. So 80% of them accept the job offers. But from our side, each trainer has this very clear instruction that if all the students in the class do not get a job offer, you can't declare that the batch is complete. Batch is only complete when 100% of them get a job offer. So that's the condition, and this is how we train the trainers. Then there is a third model, which is to produce good quality artisans in the country. Carpentry is one, plumbing is second, and third one, although it is not really an artisan, but it's an electrician. So we have 3 these centers. Now we are creating multipliers of that, where we are in a 9-month program, 6 months in the classroom and 3 months on the job. So these are the 3 models. 4th model is to train the trainers. Train the trainers, again, there are 2 models. One for the bridge program, which is a 1-week training, and one for the long-term career-oriented programs, which is for engineers. So those who complete their engineering 4-year, they come to our center for 1-year technical training to become technical trainers. So those are the models for the trainers. I already mentioned this is 2 months in the class and 1 month on the job. In most cases where they go for 1 month on the job training, the employers offer them the jobs then and there. They don't let them go out. Some of them have actually started now giving the stipend in the 3rd month. That means the 1st month of the on-the-job training, which earlier we were not asking for. The focus is now to set up these centers, not to run bridge program, but to run train the trainer program in the universities. In view of the new education policy which is coming now, which says that at least 50% of the youth should undergo some kind of a skilling program, whether you are in the university or in college. And we are now in discussion with the universities. 2 weeks before, we had a Vice Chancellor's conclave in Bosch. We invited about 25 of them, and we were discussing with them how can we build the skilling into the current education system. The response was very positive. They want to do. Many of them said, we don't know how. So if the industry can come forward and help us, not that we don't want to, maybe sometime before we didn't want, but now we are interested, so help us in collaborating with us, help us in telling us to how to do it, and we are interested. I mentioned already about Train the Train program. We are also encouraging other corporates to come in and join with us. Tata is one of the benchmark, or Tata is the benchmark of CSR in the country, so they do everything good and great. When the team came to Bosch Vocational Center, they said, yes, we do all the good things, but as far as skilling is concerned, we would like to work with you. So we work, actually Tata Steel runs the bridge program in Jamshedpur and few other places. There are other corporates also who are joining hands with us. Since I already have the indication that I'm exceeding time, so it's also my last slide. Thank you for the time.
I now request Dr. Banerjee to share with us some insights from ASER, which I think is a landmark report on our education system in the country.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to come here. Often you get invited once to come somewhere and then you don't get invited again. But I'm very grateful to the Asia Society for having invited me twice. That must mean that the first time was kind of okay. And it's always a pleasure to come back to Bombay to meet a very wide cross-section of people. When the invitation came for the panel, I like to go on panels where I don't have to speak on education, because that's what I've been doing for 25 years. So I hope you'll ask me questions other than on education. But I think this is a topic on which you can't not connect what happens to young people. You can't not connect it to what happened to them before they became young. As you know, the ASER report, the Annual Status of Education report, we've been doing it now for almost well over a decade. And it covers basically three major questions. Are you enrolled in school? Can you read very simple text? And can you do arithmetic? That's all really it is, excepting it's done in every rural district in India. We look at kids almost all the way up to 16, because there are still a lot of children who are in standard 8 and 16. After 2014, when we'd done it for 10 years, we decided that there are other aspects of education or of our system that need to be explored. And so now, and I think we'd like to think that the key message of ASER had begun to sink in many quarters. And so every alternate year, we focus on a different age group so that we can have an opportunity to learn a little bit more. And so 2017, we focused on the age group 14 to 18. And it's a very interesting age group because up to 14, in India, at least on law, is you have compulsory education. And it's not just compulsory. If you look at the numbers, and I know we want to go beyond numbers, but sometimes numbers help to just start the conversation. In every single year age group, broadly, if you look at the census, we have 25 million people. And so, there are 25 million 14-year-olds, 25 million 15-year-olds, roughly speaking. Now, if I go even as, not very far back, 2007-8, and look at enrollment in Standard 8, that number was something around 11-12 million. And that's not that long ago. It's a little more than 10 years ago. And if you look at the most recent statistics that are available from the government on 8th standard enrollment, and that covers all government, private, and everyone, in 2016, the number was close to 23 million. So in the space of 10 years, we've gone from half our kids reaching 8th standard to almost everyone reaching 8th standard. And I think it's a little bit of an unsung achievement, because enrollment is very high, but we assume that kids, we must have lost them along the way. But actually, at least in terms of formal enrollment, almost accepting for, of course, there's a last mile problem, almost everybody is reaching 8th. So at 14, you end, 14, 15, when you have to be in school or you are in school. And then after that, officially, and I'm sure Dr. Goel will agree, you cannot place people into the organized sector unless they're 18. Officially, at least. I mean, kids work. So there is a 4-year period, which, if you just add up the numbers, it's about 100 million kids for whom at least we feel there's not really a clear plan of how they should be spending those 4 years. And so we took a kind of a closer look at, very basic questions. Did I go back or front? No, I have to do it here, right? Here. So we try to take a look at this age group, 14 to 18, and ask some very simple questions. What do they do? What are they capable of doing? And also in a very simple way, what do they want to do? And are they aware of opportunities that are available for them? The report is called Beyond Basics, and I don't want to take you through, all the details. But basically what we found is that in terms of what they do, almost everybody in this age group, 85% are still enrolled, either in school or in college. Now, enrollment is a very funny thing. And the best definition of enrollment was given to me by a kid in, I think, a 3rd or a 4th standard class in UP. Because on the blackboard in many schools, they say namankan. Namankan is a big word in Hindi. And I asked the kids, ye namankan ka matlab kya hai? And one kid put up his hand and said, namankan ka matlab hai ki mera naam school aa gaya hai. So I think enrollment is ki mera naam school aa gaya, and main bhi aata hoon kabhi-kabhi. I think is the answer. So enrollment being high is a nice thing to put on paper, but if you're not actually physically present, it's a bit of a problem. But still, the fact that you're formally still connected to the school provides an opportunity to actually bring you back to school or bring you back to wherever you're enrolled for a period of time. So we have very high enrollment even in the age group after the compulsory stage ends. And I think that's an important thing. We of course have dropouts, but we still have large number of kids who are enrolled in school. Simultaneously, our survey showed that 40% of the kids who are enrolled somewhere are actually working. And that may account for the fact of why they are not in school on a daily basis. And where are they working? And this is a rural survey. They are largely working with their parents. So either on the farm or in the shop or on whatever enterprise the parents run. And the kids were also asked, is this what you want to do? And the interesting thing that they came out was, I'm enrolled in school or college, but I don't really want to go there. And I'm working, but I don't really want to work at this work. So it's sort of 100 million kids in a very prime age who I would say are lost. And as adults, and among the adults, we have all kinds of people. We have parents, we have teachers, we have policymakers. We haven't really thought about what should be happening with these kids. Aspirations was also a very interesting thing. And again, these are rural kids and these are districts all over the country. There were very standard aspirations. Teacher, doctor, very high number of kids wanting to join armed forces or police, because I think that's something that you see around you. And so nobody wanted to be a farmer. Nobody wanted, across the board, very few kids wanted to do vocational skilling. Aspirations were very high, and if you were in the room earlier, you may have seen the film that was on, and very little understanding of how do I get to those aspirations. The film that we were showing earlier talks about these kids, and they're all about 16, 17, 18, who want to be things, but they don't have anybody around them who can actually guide them to get to whatever it is that they want to be. So we're in a very, mixed up, peculiar situation. I want to just show you also just the last bit, just extending from Asar. Here is, this is just Asar. It's quite large all over the country and so on. But here is the numbers that I think are, a little bit sobering, more than a little bit sobering. So this is a math, a division problem, 368 divided by 7, some number like that. 3 digits by 1 digit. And I've just put down as many states as I could fit into this slide about what percentage of children are able to do this in 8th standard. And this is a cohort, by the way, in 2018, who is the first cohort after the right to education has been passed. So these are kids who were in 1st standard in 2010. 2018, they're in 8th. And this is also the cohort where almost everybody is in 8th. And you can see that even among the best states, the red line is a 50% mark. There's only a few states who are over the 50% mark for kids who are able to do a simple math operation, which according to your textbooks or your curriculum, you should be doing in 4th. So we have kids who are going all the way, but actually the level of at least formal skill, they may be knowing how to do many other things, is at this level. So we said, maybe math is not so important. Maybe. I do think it is. But you should be able to navigate your ordinary life. And among these 23 million who have reached 8th standard, they're often the first in their families who've reached that far. So you're carrying aspirations, not just your own aspirations, but you're carrying the aspirations of many other people in your family who never reached that far. And certainly of your parents, who now feel that if you've gone that far, you're going to go a lot further. You're not going to be like me. And so we asked the kids some what we thought was everyday questions. And these are not pen and paper tests. These are one-on-one. Somebody's asking you this and you're replying. So if you look at the first one, it just says a girl went to sleep at 10:30 and she woke up at 5:30 in the morning. How many hours did she sleep? Another one with chlorine tablets. You need 3 tablets to purify 15 liters of water, so 40 liters, how much will you need? We try to think of what kind of financial calculations are you doing. So there is a set of books you need to buy, and you have 2 shops. One of them is giving you this deal, and the other one is giving you that. Which one should you go for? You want to buy a T-shirt, there is 10% off, and very everyday simple questions. And these were asked only to the kids who actually could do the division problem. And you can see the numbers here. And another interesting thing about this is in our normal Asar, which is just simple reading and math, and you look at it up to 8th standard, you don't see much of a boy-girl difference. But on these kinds of things, you're seeing quite a big difference between boys and girls. Why? I can't say. Maybe you're just, don't do these calculations as much. So the reason I wanted to put these up for today's discussion is that the magnitude of how many kids we should think about and where they are today has to be kept in mind. And we know that anybody going into the organized sector is actually quite small. So most of these kids are going to be working in some form of fashion outside of the organized sector. And the cohorts that are following are all going to be of this size. Because if anything that we have succeeded in is, we have succeeded in convincing families and children that stay in school. We have dropouts, but I think the biggest problem is that you're enrolled in school, but you're not attending. So you're neither there nor here. And we need to think about what is the strategy, and that nobody wants vocational skilling. A lot of colleagues are here from Pratham's vocational skilling side. And for every 100 kids that we try to convince to come into vocational skilling, for boys, I think the number is 5. And for girls, the number is less than 3. So a huge amount of effort is also going in convincing people to come into sort of entry level, to come into vocational skilling, where our placement rates also, Dr. Goel, are quite very high, well above 90%. So if you came, you're assured of an entry level job, but people's aspirations are something else. So I just thought that maybe this would be an interesting thing to at least leave with everyone, that this is what we are talking about and how shall we think about it.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. That was quite insightful. So I'm going to take your request and not ask you something about education, but more about philosophy. I'm going to pick from something that you said, that here the problem is that kids are not going to school, and those who are don't want to be there, and there are many who don't get work, but those who get work don't want to do the work they're doing. Do you feel somewhere that this generation, Gen Z as many call it, lacks a sense of purpose? Because purpose is what drives any motivation to do anything. And right now, education or skill development has become a mere formality for the student as well as for the institution. And if you agree that largely people lack purpose, do you think that could be a powerful solution to get the horse to want to drink the water and not having to force the horse to drink the water? Yes?
Yeah, I think, there's certainly a huge mismatch.
Yeah.
Now, I think part of the mismatch comes from us having created an education system which is very academically oriented. The assumption is that you're going to go very far if you're on this track.
Yeah.
And because I think we've done a pretty impressive job in, increasing access widely, which we should do. I don't think that's the problem. But we haven't. Our education system today is based on a model where only actually few are going to succeed. So if you look at the teaching in our typical schools, actually in any kind of school, your typical teaching is to the top of the class. Your teaching is to the kids who are at grade level, because everybody in this room is from that category. You are all at the top of the class, and therefore you have gone further and further.
Not me, but yeah.
But you were not, you in 5th grade were reading. Okay? And so it's designed for people who are going to go far, but a very large number of people are not going to go that far. You have hidden drop, just like you have hidden unemployment, you have hidden, I think, dropout. Because those kids, I mean, more or less by the time you're in 4th standard, you can predict that these kids are in school, but they're not learning, or they haven't had the opportunity to learn. And so they're not going to actually go down this path, but we are all pretending that they will, and therefore now we are universalizing secondary education. Rather than thinking about what is it that we need for, So this rising aspirations is, I think, a function of all of this. And the fact that you're putting people through a very academic path without really, calculating that nobody is going to, very, very few are going to go all the way. You're delaying kind of the problem that I'm talking about. To me, apart from, so that's why I don't know if I agree with the word purpose. I think that the whole system is structured for something else, and we are somewhere else.
And could you explain that a bit more? Because you're very right. There's a mismatch between the expectation and what's happening.
Yeah, so I think there's a very strong purpose in the education system, which is implicit and explicit both, is you've got to do well in your 10th board exam. Now, doing well in the 10th board exam is not equal to a good education or a great opportunity, but that's the goalpost you have to pass.
Right.
So when I see pictures of, for example, mass-scale cheating, and people say, and I'm also from Bihar, I have to say, and those pictures tend to be from there, I feel actually it's the smartest, most rational reaction to a really stupid situation where you're asking me to sit for some damn fool exam for which you haven't prepared me at all, but I'm expected to get through it. Therefore, finding strategic ways that will take me through it, I think these are all entrepreneurs, I mean, I'm saying it in a funny way.
Yeah, of course.
But it's if people had a choice, they'd say that, this is the wrong thing you're asking me to do.
Right.
And if you wanted me to do this, why didn't you prepare me, better? So
interesting that you say this. So recently I read that IBM and Google have started saying we don't care about degrees, we don't care about qualification. So do you think that this mismatch is actually an opportunity to flip education system on its head and say, okay, we need to reimagine qualifications in the first place and focus and quantify intelligence more than the ability to reproduce knowledge?
I mean, in the organized sector, I think the education system, and I think many people have said it, I'm just repeating what they've said, I think we have a selection system.
Yeah.
And we have a selection system to select out those who are going to go into the organized sector and then, get the degree that, I'll not repeat what you called it, but that's... And I think that it works well for that selection system. But considering that, if you looked at my 8th standard results, that there is, 60-70% who are not even at a 4th grade level in 8th standard, I'm not going to get there, right? And so most of the time what is happening is people are working in the unorganized sector where actually your degree is not required.
Right.
But what the education system is doing, or the selection system is doing, is giving you a feeling of inferiority, of weakness, of the fact that I'm not worth it and not capable for no good reason, because it was not designed for me.
Yeah.
So yes, if we were able to have a unorganized sector which had higher prestige, where parents felt, and I think parents are a big part of this. It's all very well to say this. My own kids sometimes say, you go on stage and you say all sorts of things and you come home and say, sit for your exams, Right? So, I think that until this, how do you exit the school system is changed, we will be trapped in this selection system phenomena, and kids who are not going to make it still feel somehow that I have to strive for it.
So I'm going to pick on that, and before we move on to Dr. Goel, this one last point that you said. So the baby boomers mindlessly produced 500 million people. For what joy, I don't know. But now we have 500 million young people across from 35 and below. Do you think that where nobody's addressing the elephant in the room, that actually there will not be enough and adequate and meaningful opportunities for all? And if that is the case, then what happens to the people who don't have the ability or the intelligence or the qualifications to be part of the system? Is it micro-entrepreneurship? Is it universal basic income? What about them?
So I think that you're absolutely right. I think that a lot of the discussion happens on is the school system, right?
Yeah.
I think we've got to think about what is the work that we are talking about?
Correct.
What's the life that we are talking about? And are we equipping ourselves for that life?
Yeah.
So again, this selection system is based on individual excellence.
Right.
Who came first in class? How many marks did you get? Apart from school, you never do anything alone in this country. I mean, all these 500 million people are in, all kinds of groups, all kinds of things where you have to do things together. Clearly, there are not going to be enough jobs, and there haven't been enough jobs even in the past for these kind of people.
Right.
But people have found livelihoods, better, worse, ineffective, unproductive. And I think that we need to start. What the future will hold is very hard to say, but we are not developing habits of how to cope with that early on. Why can't, for example, kids in third standard be given an assignment which says, what is the problem in your village? Can you go identify something? I think kids are very capable. We do a lot of work with young kids.
Great idea.
And they do well with groups.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can equip people for employability at a very young age, but working in groups, working with people who are not like you, thinking about applied problems, thinking about what can make life easier for my family at home right now, all of these things we can start, which to me is like a pre-entrepreneurial, work-life kind of a readiness.
So, thank you so much. That was very insightful. Dr. Goel, you spoke about the Bridge program, and I especially appreciate that your focus is on school dropouts, because dropouts are for various reasons. For example, I was suspended for a month for writing a love letter, and that doesn't mean I'm any less capable. I would have been chucked out. But what I'm trying to say is that how do you bring people who have not been part of the schooling system, how do you train them to be at par with the ability to those who have been out of the schooling system? Because they still have to perform at the same level for an employer. So how do you train them differently as compared to those who may have a formal qualification?
I think I add a little bit to your earlier question, what you asked from Rukmini on qualification and education.
Yes.
We are perhaps thinking that both are equal, but we have a lot of qualified people who are not educated. So we have the certificates.
Right.
And many a times the question embrace us when the Germans ask us, when we meet them, we hear that in India you get a certificate first and then you can get trained. Right. It doesn't happen in Germany. So we don't know how to answer that question. And it's true. When we talk to also people in the government, we say that you are the one who know how to conduct exams and how to sign the certificates, but you don't know how to skill people.
Yeah.
So the challenge is not with whether the kid has a purpose or not. Based on my experience, I can say with the kind of kids we meet, even in the Bridge program who fail in class 12th and come, I see that they are far more clearer in their life than what we were at that time. Actually, the purpose of life, what they say, it's beyond money. They are thinking beyond money, that there should be a purpose in life, which perhaps we didn't have. So, per se, I don't find fault with the generation. Maybe we, as a country, are not having the right kind of education system for them, because we made it more qualification oriented. You get a certificate, you get marks, you get a certificate, but not the education per se.
Yeah.
Coming back to your question, let me share one example. It's very old, about 25 years old. Delhi government started one vocational program for 10th pass students. They said, we will teach you how to repair a two-wheeler for 2 years in 11th and 12th. After that, if you want to go for higher education, no problem, we will give you a 12th pass certificate. So this will be 10 plus 2 vocational. For 2 years, we will train you. If you want to start your own two-wheeler shop, if you want to work with a garage, you can work. Otherwise, you can go for higher education. Top 10% of the students who were always getting attention of the teacher were the toppers there in that program. None of them wanted to start a garage. None of them wanted to work for a garage. And all of them wanted to become engineers. And they went and joined the engineering college. So the vocational system was actually for those 90% who didn't have the capability to become an engineer, but then we ended up teaching two-wheeler repairing to those 10% who are the toppers. And that is what I think Rukmini talked about, the mismatch. So this is the mismatch. I don't see that this is a fault of the kid or they don't want to learn. I think we have not learned how to teach them.
Perhaps. You mentioned about, somebody learning how to be a mechanic and so on. Do you think that automation, which is this whole other factor which one has to explore, and it is suddenly cropped up, like I often say, in a country like India, there's a fight between a Bihari getting a job or a Maharashtrian getting a job, but when a robot takes the job, it doesn't matter if you're Bihari or Maharashtrian, the job's going to go anyways. Do you think that's going to be a threat in the next 3 to 5 years, especially for mechanized jobs?
I won't see it in 3 to 5 years, maybe perhaps more than 10 years.
Which is not that good news as well, because 10 years, there are many other problems that will also accumulate. Yes. How do we prepare for something like this?
Now, look at the numbers. When we see a report in the newspaper that Maruti is going to remove 3,000 people, Bosch plant is closed for 1 week. So there is a big headline in the paper. So many people don't have work because the industry is going down, especially the automobile industry, but all the other industries are also going down. Same day when I see the headline in the paper for my own plant, which is closed for 1 week, I have an email saying that one company wants to employ 57,000 youth. There are 57,000 vacancies available in one company. Next day I get another email, 27,000 vacancies in one company. That company's name is Portia, the home health care. The head of HR, the lady came and met me and said, entire your bridge program, where all you are running this program, you tell me and I want to employ them. The 57,000, what I said, is from Paytm. So there are jobs available. But what kind of jobs, how much do they pay, who are the target audience for that is a different thing. But we talk about, block closure of 1 week, we talk about 3,000 jobs, we talk about, Infosys removing, let's say, 10,000 people. But those people, let me talk about my own company. In Bosch, we have the average salary of a blue-collar worker, the guys who come from this vocational center some 25 years before who came, 30 years before who came, the average salary is now 97,000 rupees per month for a blue-collar worker. So if we want some of them to live and go, at the same time we're also hiring people because the same kind of a work now is being done by the youth who will only be paid about 22,000 rupees. So I don't see this as a challenge that the jobs will be taken away by the robots. We are also a very highly automated company.
Yes.
We are becoming, at least. I don't see that as a challenge. I would believe that instead of an artificial intelligence being a problem for us, I think the natural stupidity is the problem for us.
Very well said. Very, very well said.
Yeah. So if we,
please.
Yeah, no, I only put a number because you said that we should not talk about the numbers, but then 92% of the youth do not go into the higher education in the country. Only 8% of them go.
And why do you think that is so?
Sorry?
Why do you think that is so?
Because we as a country were never ready to, impart them education. Their reasons are various, whether it is the opportunities. There are no schools. Actually, there were no schools in the rural areas at one point in time. The economic reasons, the social reasons. So all kind of reasons put together. Only 8% go for higher education. Even for higher education also, barring few years before, we didn't have so many colleges and universities. Of course, after the Knowledge Commission came, it started opening some private universities. The number is now, I think, about more than 700 or so. I wanted to copy something from US. But then, so is the case with the skilling. NSDC started in 2008 under Ministry of Finance. Perhaps there is no other country where a skilling department, a skilling division can be under Ministry of Finance. We didn't have a Ministry of Skill. So they are the mismatches. I think the reason is not one. So I'm saying we were not ready to skill people. We were not ready to educate people properly. And that is why we landed into a situation where only 92%, about 92% of them actually leave out of the schooling system by the time they reach 18 years. What she was saying, the number is 22 million every year.
Yes, I do have a slight difference of opinion, but that's to discuss offline.
But you can please open up. You can also disagree.
Yes, sure. But we would like to welcome Mr. Narayanan, and I think we need to have a panel just on air traffic control to see why flights are getting delayed so often in this country.
It is purely my stupidity and ill planning. Like, my apologies to every one of you, not to blame them.
Okay, that's very humble. So since you in your role as a consultant and a partner with KPMG, you do deal with a lot of companies, with a lot of employers. You know, in the last decade, we've seen a massive shift in the expectations of abilities, skill sets, attitudes from the workforce on the part of the employers. Could you enlighten us on what factors cause this change in expectations on the side of the employers? And also, what are these new expectations? Because it's important for the skill development mechanism to be able to meet those expectations.
Okay. No, well, thank you so much. And once again, apologies, but let me answer that. It's not just employers. The expectation of the employees are also changing significantly.
Of course.
Now, for employers, it's a bit of force fit. Now, let me start with an example. Now, this is a NBFC, very traditional NBFC, who's my client, continues to be my client. And they are so traditional that everything by them, as in a credit appraisal will be done by people who put 30 years of experience in the firm, and they trust only that person to do that. And so hence that was one high post. If anybody gets into this finance company, then you need to spend so many years to do credit appraisal. Last month they said, the entire credit appraisal is done by bots. I was surprised. What you actually gave the most important part of what you do to bots? They said bots are perfect. They are not biased. They work relentlessly. They don't take leave. They don't do any of these things. So I'm able to increase my revenues. I'm able to go to more number of people because I depend on bots. But the point there, the story doesn't end there. They say, so I don't take people for credit appraisal and all those things, but I now need people for managing these bots. I don't know when they misbehave. I don't know what all things that happen there. So I actually want people for cyber security. I want people who can program bots. I want people who can work on efficiencies. Because there are bots, there is pressure to introduce new products. Everybody is asking for so much flexibility. Now suddenly I need people in sales that I never thought I need. So my short point is, I don't think there is net loss of job. There's a big shift that is happening. We are passing through the transition, so we look at that area where we are losing jobs and we are scared. But as you rightly said, there are many people who are hiring. And the fact is, 1/3 of the world's working age population is going to be from India. I think we have every reason to be what can you say, charged up, because the whole world, or at least 1/3 of the world, is going to depend on us. Simple point is, are we ready to take on that? Or are we going to try and crib here saying, I lost this driver's job, I lost this mechanic's job, and other thing, but that will go. Isn't that the fact of life? Like, 90s when IT came in, nobody complained that there is a new software job that has come, and automation did take away some job. And today we all speak so highly of IT as that is a sector. IT, I remember I was very young and I joined the workforce then. And I was like a computer engineer. Then there was a Garo. They didn't allow me to get into my client place because they said, you've come to steal my job, you don't come inside. Now, it's the most sought after sector. So my point is, we should, as the society, as learners, we should adapt ourselves. The second problem that the employer is saying, that's one is technology. Technology in a very big way. Technology is not just this. Like, for example, there is IoT that is, and machine learning and other things that is affecting in a big way. There is artificial intelligence that is throwing everything out of gear. Recently, our CEO, I'll tell you how we made a virtue out of stuff. Like, something like this happened. My CEO who was supposed to inaugurate, Arun, who was supposed to inaugurate something in Delhi, couldn't travel there. That happens to be a digital launch. So in the intervening thing, we did something that we could do the best. We had a holographic image of Arun Kumar opening that center. And everybody thought that was a part of the design, that it's a digital lab. So they actually had a holographic image. Nothing stopped. My point is, technology is affecting you in various different ways. Some things that we are not even able to comprehend today. But that's not the only reason that is happening. The second trend I'm seeing is the earlier thought of a job and that's going to give career progression and that I'm going to continue on this seems to have gone away. People are not anymore want to be employed for life. So if I'm an employer, I'm worried because after 2 years, my worker is the best of my employee is restless. And not for any reasons that I know. He just wants to do, or she just wants to do visual communication and wants to get into a completely different field. How do you manage a workforce that is very different from what was some time back? The third trend that in my view is affecting is they say compared to 2006-7, the cross-border transaction of data, transfer of data has increased 45 times. That is, earlier, if so much data went from India or from US here, so the globalization and global adoption, like you get a phone right the next day, and I remember how many days we used to wait for some model to be. So that trend is also affecting me. Now I can't wait and learn from someone. I need to be in sync with what is happening across the globe. So there are many factors, but I would put these three on top. A big shift in technology, the changing nature of workforce, and globalization in a big way.
So taking a cue from that, so obviously we're concluding that the abilities required or the attitudes required today are slightly different than probably a couple of years ago.
Quite different.
Quite different. But typically the only way when a graduate seeks a job, and I'm saying a formally educated graduate, presents his or her degree for the job. But employers are saying the degree is no longer the only valuable data set because we need to know so much more. So I want to pick your brain, just live brainstorming, actually everyone. What should be the new form of qualification or validation of ability if it's not a degree anymore?
It is definitely not degrees because you have many, we work with a lot of universities.
Yeah.
St. Andrews is one of the university in Edinburgh. This is the third oldest university in the world and they have the kings and queens. And when I was talking to the dean who was in charge of this, he said the university format is under threat. Because earlier, they were the ones who could issue degrees. Now, there are many who says, why do you want to study only from St. Andrews, which is good in certain things, but may not be good in that. So I'll get you this from Imperial, the other one from Oxford, I'll get this from Harvard, and so you can pull together and show a degree of sorts. You can show credit. So degree per se, the way it was, is not. We do work with NSDC a lot, and the government has come up with National Skills Qualification Framework. I mean, in a traditional, in a standard sense, in my view, that is a good replacement. If you have skills qualification framework, calibrated from 1 to 10, depending on what you are, or for that particular, like for example, say for example, as a beautician, you are level 3, but as a driver, you could be level 5.
Yeah.
So you can decide on these things because we don't recognize multiple talents unless you have completed a degree in this. So in my view, talent could be calibrated in this form. The other point before I hand over is, I think because the topic is also about unskilled labor and the school dropouts, I think they are more precious than graduates.
Of course.
The reason is, they are the ones who are needed for many of them, and their salary levels are definitely going to go up and it is going to become a lot more wanted in other parts. So our ability to get them out of that mindset in terms of how do you get them to look at formal training, how do you get them to look at get trained, and the stigma attached with skill development versus this, and we did work with CBSE schools, huge resistance to bring in vocational training into schools. Many schools they said, but why? I mean, I'm this school, why do you want vocational training? As if that is something that is untouchable kind of stuff. Like, so my point is, unless you have that mindset change that happens with that, and the counseling happens to those students, it's not going to be, fruitful.
Ma'am.
I mean, I think it's a very interesting topic. I have 2 points to make. One is how we get trapped in our own mindset. And I'm going to give you a personal experience. We had a program at one stage for child labor. In this case, it was boys who were working in, all kinds of zari business and so on, in really, quite difficult situations. Many of these kids, particularly in Bombay, were brought from Bihar. So we started these residential programs in the block from where they came. Now there's a particular block in Kishanganj, which is, near the chicken's neck of India. Very backward area. And these were kids, and we were very proud that now they've come back home and, they forget about dropout, they'd never gone to school, and we're giving them a good education. But somewhere we also felt that they need to get some, real skills. I mean, and so the particular place where they would stay in our hostel, but they would go to the local middle school once they were a little bit ready to do that. But since it was a residential, we felt let's introduce a little bit of vocational skilling or whatever, some other skill. So, and we are working on very tight budgets and so on, and we were trying to think of what are these things that you'll need forever. So first we taught them cutting hair. So they cut each other's hair. But how much hair can you cut? There are 40 kids. I mean, how often do you need a haircut? And those boys anyway had short hair. So that was one. Okay, so we did that. So somebody came up with the idea that in India we have, whatever 1 billion people, you'll always need clothes. So tailoring. Doesn't matter if all really good tailors are men. So it's not a man-woman thing. And a very good idea. So how do you find the trainer for it? So we did a little survey in the market. It was a little, it was like a block town. And most tailors didn't know what the hell, if you said to the tailor ki aap mere ko na tailoring ka curriculum bana ke do, they said, aap na school mein jao, ye sab idhar nahi hota hai. So even people whose service you wanted could not adjust their mindset to what is the hell that you wanted. Eventually we found someone, and that guy was actually really an innovative character. The first thing that he gave them, the kids, to make was a petticoat. Because you actually need it, but you never see it. So if it's a little bit, not quite okay, it's fine because it's underneath. Now the kids picked this up to say that, okay, petticoat to bana liya, to phir bana ke karenge kya? तो हम लोग थोड़ा market survey कर लेते हैं. And this is I remember the time, it was just before Eid. They went into the market, they checked out the petticoat prices. It was say 100 rupees. These guys undercut the market and started selling petticoats for 75 rupees. And then the kids negotiate with us to say, school will bhul jao yaar. Hamara thriving business chal raha hai. They are 14, 15 years old. And we had one part of Pratham saying, right to education. But here were kids who had sniffed out, here is the right opportunity. I went there for a visit. These boys sat with me. Nobody was more than 16, negotiated. Ye kapda de do, ye de do. We'll make shirts for everybody. Cut rate de denge. Normal, enterprise at the highest.
Yeah.
I backed off saying, my God, we've done all this to get these kids back into the school system and to go and become, maybe we are getting sidetracked. But this taught us an important lesson, that this balance is very difficult. I can see why CBSE would be really scared because they would be doing this at a much higher scale. Now, similarly, in our skilling program, we have in our Kolhapur center, we ran, I don't know if we are doing it now. They're all sitting here, my colleagues. Automotive, scooter, motorcycle repair for girls. We got lots of girls. Okay. Now, you pass this season, and then it turns out that these girls, they get better jobs than the boys because now there is in plenty of front office work as well. Okay, and you are getting more and more, especially in smaller towns, you're getting a lot of... but did the girls want those jobs? Many of them wanted to start their own business. You're, 19 years old, you've got a 2-month degree, you've got a job currently, but you want to set up your own business, and 3 of them want to set it together. Nobody will give them a loan. And so it's sort of like, you need a sort of mindset on both sides that when you see people taking up an opportunity, how do you support them to go further?
Correct.
And I feel our skilling system, you must be having this all the time. People want to set up their own, but they're really young. They haven't had much experience and nobody wants to risk. I'll give you a job, yaar, usi mein karo tum bhi. Baad mein aana to do business. I remember one of these girls, I asked her that what do your parents say? She said, my father drives an auto. He's saying, make your business successful, then I'll join you. But you make it successful first. So now, even her parents are saying, figure it out. She's 19 years old. Where is she going to go with this desire? And nobody wants to give you loans. So I think we've got to loosen up and have, the possibility for young people who want to go ahead to be given a chance to do that. And you're talking about one end of the spectrum and I'm talking about the other end.
No, I think, you're absolutely right. Like what Sir also said that, it's the natural intelligence, the opposite of natural stupidity. This is natural intelligence. This is you have a hard skill and you have the innate ability and the desire, ambition to start a business, an enterprise.
An opportunity and you want to do it. And then you're told the system won't allow you to do it.
However, but just circling back to the question that how do you quantify these innate soft skills or vocational skills or attitudes? Because the NSDC qualification framework is largely based on technical skills, but largely. But
you're right. It's largely based on
technical skills, but a lot of employers want to see the soft skills or the vocational side, even how entrepreneurial you are, what's your attitude.
So for example, say in Pratham we have about 12,000 people who work for us. If somebody was to able to come and give me, I am the guy who was thrown out of my class all the time, I was the naughty girl, I would hire them. Because those are the actually characteristics we need in the work that we do.
Right.
Now, since you don't write CVs saying, you only write CVs about your individual marks and such
Correct.
course, which are of no use to us, we put them through some kind of a on-the-job apprenticeship to see, will this person last out in the conditions that we want? He could be 10th class, 8th class, whatever it is. But if you're good with kids, you're good with communities, I watch you, and someone who is a master at this is watching you, then we'll take you. We have plenty of people in our leadership who've come up that way.
Do you see, Mr. Narayanan, so of course Pratham as an organization does that, but when the kind of companies that KPMG works with, do you see organizations like that saying one day, fine, I don't care about what's written on your degree, tell me that you've been chucked out of class, tell me that you've, done something in college and rusticated because you were spending time building something instead of being in class. Is that something that you will see a mindset shift at scale?
They don't necessarily look at only those who are rusticated.
No, this was just
the days of asking for only a CGPA and evaluating everything through CGPA is definitely gone.
Are you saying that at scale?
Yeah. So I see, including KPMG, one of the things that we ask, so what other courses have you done? What other things have you done in life? So it's not because there are two reasons. One is our traditional BCom, BE, whatever, is a lot to catch up.
Right.
Now what's happening is we are teaching what we learned in the past today for a requirement in the future.
Right.
Absolute mismatch. So one is what I call as the push factor, that our traditional university system has a long way to catch up in terms of what needs to be taught.
Right.
There are some universities that are changing, but largely no. The second part also is there are only certain things that you can teach. There are some qualities that you are looking at people that perhaps is not taught. So I am not looking at somebody who necessarily has even a certificate or something. So I ask things like, what excites you? What do you do in your... So these things of a personality trait is going to be very important, and shaping that is an important part of training the youngsters.
So do you see, therefore, psychometrics as one of the criteria of the future? Psychometric tests and...
Psychometrics, all those things are more tests. My point is fundamentally, for example, we keep talking about this problem-solving skills. Everybody who you go says, I want to have problem-solving skills. Now, how do you measure these problem-solving skills? I thought... we were, with 3 kids at our home, my mother was the best problem solver that I have seen. So how do you measure those skills? In that half an hour in the morning, the things that she could do was truly, and all sorts of problems cropped up daily. So some of these things, and there are things about emotional intelligence, how good you are in team. So many of those things, while there are tests like psychometrics and tests to an extent, does it actually plow back into your education system? When you are in school, do you have any means of teaching what we call as life skills, which goes beyond what you teach technically, which anyway is useless? So that is why employers now start looking at them, or like, Rukmini ma'am said, they invest time in training them. So our survey says, on an average, people take 6 to 18 months before they become a useful employee.
But the problem is they leave by the 10th month.
That is one problem. And look at the national waste. Suppose if somebody comes in, I'm not saying universities should transform themselves into training grounds for employees. That's not what I mean.
Correct.
But if it takes 6 to 18 months for somebody to be productive, understand and be useful, it's a big waste.
Can I give one more example? So this ASAR survey that we do is in every district in India. Rural district in India. So 575, 580 districts. And so when we first started doing this, people said, how will you find the people? So you have to remind people we do have 1 billion people, and they are, in all these districts. And one of the requirements we have is it will be a local organization or an institution. Now, over these last 10, 15 years, we can track and we don't have any money. One of the best things is to say, I don't have any money, I have a big ambitious task, can you do it? And people come forward. So we just give them enough to go by bus or whatever it is to the village. What are the tasks? The tasks are, here's the name of a village, go find it, do this, this, this. I'll give you 3 days training, tight time schedule. I'm going to actually cross-check on some random basis to make sure you've collected the data well. I'm astounded how many people come forward. And the further you are from the capital, the better the quality of the work. And I was just like this last Sunday, I was in Nalanda district in Bihar. There were 2 boys who are from a teacher training college. So I was asking them how this stuff that you're doing, okay? Here's what they said. They said, I've been in a teacher training college. This is my 2nd year. मैं अपने घर से कॉलेज जाता हूँ और वापस आता हूँ. मैंने ना दुनिया नहीं देखी है. Thank you so much कि आपने मुझे दुनिया दिखाई. And it's not only dunya dikhai, they are following instructions. They've been given the responsibility of collecting this data well. People ask us all the time, how are you sure the data is done well? You train them well, you give them the right purpose. So to me, 25, 30,000 in that year do this. I can easily hire who I want out of this because they have delivered something well or badly. It was all done in 5 days, 2 or 3 days of training, 2 days of actually doing the work and 1 verification. The cost of this forget about the data collection. The cost of these 25,000 people actually done some productive work is about 2 crore rupees. Which if I look at anybody's train, I often feel like I should offer these people to say, aake leke jao inko yaar. They are actually really good quality people. And where they are, there is nobody looking at them like that. They are waiting for that degree that stupid teacher training college will give them for having gone from home to college. And I think there are many, of course, if you're a company, you have to do things,
differently.
Proper way, with NSDC and whatnot.
Yes.
But if you're a flexible outfit like us, you can find good quality people.
No, but I think that as Mr. Narayanan rightly pointed out that I think companies also have to change based on the generation. So if they remain uptight the way they are, then...
Sorry to interrupt. In any case, there are so many employees also here. After the first time you saw or you think they have the degree, have you ever asked for the degree?
Of course.
I don't know where I have my degree. I might have lost it for all you know.
So moving on from this, I think the common consensus on the panel is that formal schooling, or at least the way it is, may not necessarily be important, the only important thing. What is then the panel's view on e-learning as an alternative medium to, because you might not need school, but you still need some form of training, some form of induction of knowledge. Are you guys positive on e-learning as a replacement or an alternative to formal schooling? Because today you have billions of dollars flowing into companies like Byju's and Upgrad and so on, and there's a talk about them becoming schools of the future. But as educationists and somebody who's run a skill development center, do you think e-learning is a good and powerful enough replacement for a brick and mortar structure?
So in my view, e-learning purely depends on the self-motivation to learn. If you are in a classroom, at least there is somebody to teach you. You need a very high level of self-motivation if you want to e-learn. Right. It's not only from somebody who is looking for a job. Even in a company like ours, and even for me alone, there will be a compulsory WBT by the company. You have to undergo, you have to take up this course. For that also to complete, you keep getting reminders and because you have to do it. So making e-learning available is one part, but what will it result into? Once you complete that course, will you really learn a skill, and how you are going to use it, how you are going to benefit from it? So that is a question for e-learning. In terms of scale, there is no doubt that e-learning can give you great scale. Yes. But this means that you have to have sufficient self-motivation to learn. So,
your view, ma'am?
So we've been actually really exploring what can you do with technology. Okay, and I agree with Dr. Goel when he says that any learning, E or otherwise, has to do with purpose, has to do with motivation, has to do with what will it lead to, has to do with choice, all kinds of things. We come from a system where tum class mein ghus gaye to tumko wo textbook karna hai. But if you had more choice, even at that stage, you would learn choice and you would learn. So we have about 1,000 villages in which we have something that we are doing outside of school. Outside of school because the school has a lot of constraints. Curriculum, grade, all sorts of things. In these groups, the village is saturated. So it took the idea of this Sugata Mitra's hole in the wall kind of thing, that you leave kids alone with something and then let's see what they do. So these children they share a tablet. So it's not a tablet for you alone. You share. about 4 or 5 children share a tablet with another group. So firstly, you have to negotiate when you get it and so on and so forth. And we try to do things that the school system doesn't do. Leave them alone. Nobody is compelling you to use it. You figure out your own time. Some of these villages are in UP. UP school attendance is at somewhere between 50-60%. On any average day, about half the children are in school. In these groups, self-attending is 80%. So that means there's something going on that the kids want to do. Maybe it's just to hang out with their friends, maybe, right? Then we discovered that our original idea when we went in is that I'll give you content because, I know and you presumably don't know, and I'll organize you in a bit and then you will learn.
Yeah.
And I think what is increasingly happening is that we see that if you create a hybrid structure, where a lot of it is a social organization, the kids are talking about what they're doing, whatever is in the content is often used in many different ways.
Yeah.
And then we found that there's also a two-way process, which is that, for example, last summer, and these are kids who are maybe between 10 and 14, tablets have a camera. All of India is taking photographs all the time and making videos. Nobody has run a mass training program to make videos. Everybody's phone is full of them. Good, bad, ugly, we have them all. So the kids were told कि your summer vacation में तुम्हारा topic is mango. These kids produce hundreds and hundreds of videos on mangoes. So much so that at a village level you have to set up juries for these films to be screened to upload the best. And it ranged from how your mother makes achar to mangoes in my village. And we now realize that we are not equipped for this wiki mango that's coming to us. That will have to be sorted out. So this learning can have a huge potential of being two-way of what you do. And again, I find that we are underprepared for what you have unleashed. To take the maximum advantage about technology and learning and what is the right social organization, what is the right kind of balance of scaffolding versus leaving people alone, by being stuck for 6 hours a day in your grade level curriculum, an entire CBSE telling you that this is the only way to go, we are losing huge potential of how learning could be quite different. And the final thing on this is, you ask the kids कि तुमने ये films तुम्हारे teacher को दिखाए, kid after kid will tell you, नहीं, ये बाहर का है, वो अलग है. So the place that you think is learning, universities, schools, most people who are in it don't think any learning is going on there, but they're highly active outside of that, doing all this kind of fancy stuff, but not wanting to get into that, place.
Yeah.
So, if this is a history of mismatches, here's another one. There's no lack of dynamism in many parts of our economy, and they are dead in other.
Well said.
In fact, with Google, not recently, a couple of years back, we did a survey and we saw this online education growing exponentially. And it's not just this ubiquitous online learning. There is for schools, there is for hobbies, there is for higher learning, there is for degrees, there is so many of these things. Now, my take on this is, whether you like or not, this is going to remain. And like ma'am rightly said, kids love this.
Yeah.
And to an extent where, like for example, even in engineering colleges, I see kids saying, those boring, regular concepts, we will learn better outside. Because I know what my teacher is going to do. He or she is going to take up the notes that his or her teacher taught many years back, and I have a better way of learning that. So I actually did that with an electrical engineering student. He said, what will you teach, BL Tereja 1 and BL Tereja 2?
Yeah.
He says, I have learned more than that. Online there is so much content, they know more than what the teacher knows in terms of where it is available and how to learn. So my point is, online is here to stay. How you harness that, how do you use that is very important.
Right.
Online is also useful in many, many ways. Like for example, there are many schools where teachers are not there or good teachers are not there. Online is a great supplement. You can bring in a teacher who is very good, and you can on a real-time basis, if not real-time, at least online, have the teacher do and put some artificial intelligence. You can even have the teacher respond to queries.
Yeah.
In a recent experiment that we did for one of our clients, the set of questions that student ask is also not very high. So 90 to 95% you can actually program. And so when a student asks a virtual teacher any question, you can segue into that question and answer that as well. So it's a phenomenal thing when it comes to. And third, for example, nurses training, you don't get cadavers, you don't get clinical material.
Yeah.
So you can have simulated exercises on many of those things through online, which you cannot. So online, in my view, has multiple more completely different way of looking at education. You want to learn Mandarin. 10 years back, it is impossible.
Correct.
Today, you will have 50 different places where you can learn Mandarin with the exact pronunciation, who can do and all the rest of it. So online is very. But my worry about online is like, in one of the universities that we are working, students form virtual groups. I was very surprised. You're studying in the university. Why can't you form groups? No, we meet through our social media groups, and that is how we learn. That is, in my view, a little sad, because there are some life skills. We don't go to universities just to learn technical stuff. We learn a lot of other stuff there. Like, the team. Why are people not good team players when you join organizations? Because they have not worked in a team. So these are, and you never put up with others, shortcomings, you don't make up for them. I've done a lot of groups when I studied. So you don't go to the teacher and say what somebody did wrong, because your group needs to come first. So you make up for others. Those things are going. So that is the worry. But other than that, but the benefits of doing this far, far outweighs on some of the negatives that are bound to come. So online education is bound to happen. The more we adopt it, the more we leverage it to our purpose, the better we are.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because if you want to deal with unemployability at scale, you need a medium that can help you reach scale to be able to impart the skills. But coming back to a fundamental question, Dr. Goel, do you think that Skill India, as of course as a narrative, it has done great wonders in triggering a very important dialogue about upskilling India, but on ground, and I promise that the government won't impound your passport if you're frank to my answer, do you think on ground Skill India has been successful, has created successful outcomes at scale from a policy and execution level?
I think policy level, I think definitely we have progressed.
Okay.
The problem for the country has always been on the implementation. We have 17,000 ITIs in the country. Approximately 17,000 NSDC recognized short-term skilling centers. The problem is, perhaps more, the problem is the trainers are not trained. If you talk about short-term training, you don't have well-trained trainers. Talk about long-term training, in the ITIs, we are supposed to be 2 years. You don't have infrastructure. The curriculum is outdated. They haven't revised it for last 10 years, 15 years. Even now, in some trades, they try to revise it, but then it's only a formality. You don't have the opportunity for the kids to get an exposure in the industry, to the actual work life. If I compare it with Germany, at the age of 10, when the kid is just in class 4 or completing class 4, they decide whether you will go into university system called gymnasium or you will go into the vocational system. Of course, they are now debating whether 10 years is the right age to do it. Perhaps you do it a little later. They are also debating. But this has been very successfully working for decades there. That at a much early stage, you decide who go into university and who goes into vocational system. But then the people who come through the vocational system, unlike in India, are not being looked down upon. In Bosch Group companies, we have many CEOs who have come from the vocational system. Not that only an engineer MBA will become an CEO. So that kind of a thing in India is not seen. I mean, we are not feeling it. Perhaps we send our kids to a 3rd grade engineering college and not to a 1st grade ITI.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the challenge for us as India. And in Germany, it is not so. Right. It's very common for a CEO of a big company to send their kid to a vocational. If that is what the school system says, that no, this is not fit to go into engineering and they should go to the vocational, they are happy sending them there because they know that they can also succeed there.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the audience for a question-answer round. Anybody has questions, please raise your hand. My only request is to identify yourself and straight ask the question. Thank you. So that we can give more people an opportunity. So, please go ahead.
I'm Dilip Dalal. I just question for Dr. Goel. I think you have done a fabulous job in Bosch to create the students ready to take the employment, and all the students trained in your company are 100% employed. Now, my question is that India needs 1 million jobs a month. Neither government nor private sector combined together can create in the existing situation. What I was wondering, that would you like a small add-on, because you have gone on a graduate level students also now to be trained around, create entrepreneurship. And if you have the entrepreneurs created, those boys and girls would be having 10 to 15 jobs right in the time they start the job, entrepreneurship. So if you have entrepreneurship course thought over by giving about 6 months staying in the classroom, different aspects, and 3 months going down the ground, which you have a ground provided by you already. So entrepreneurship empowering youth with entrepreneurship training can be considered by you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think there is no second opinion that entrepreneurship can be a very good solution to this problem. It's a part of the problem it can solve. Based on our experience, what we have seen is that the general mindset of this youth is to go for the wage employment. They want to see some kind of a security in the wage employment, because entrepreneurship means that you have to be really very competent, and also more than competent, very confident that you will be able to run this your own business and will be able to start earning something. So after a few years of experience, we have seen the youth trying to go for the entrepreneurship, but as a fresher, the trend is not as much as we would like to see it. Even from our own center, where after 3 years, these kids, we feel that they're fully competent, but they still don't seem to be confident of starting something on their own, is what we have seen. But we should talk about the large number of youth for which the bridge program is designed. It's only short term, because you have to address those very large number. There, the time what is required for someone to be trained to become an entrepreneur becomes a challenge, because in 2-3 months time or 4 months time, you can only train somebody to get an entry level job, that too, based on soft skill and service.
Thank you, sir. Please.
We do a lot of work for government. Only 10 to 20% of the jobs are these formal jobs. If there are 100 jobs that are required, only 10 to 20 are the structured formal companies. 80 to 90% of the jobs don't get the training that are required, because they are all, 5-10 people working in a place, some entrepreneur, somebody who's employed, somebody like, these are not the people who get any training at all. So the big thing that the India is grappling, and the ministry is, I was day before yesterday sitting in a planning meeting where they said, are we training the right set of people? For this 10-20%, anyway they have big training centers, they will train. Bosch has a big one. Why do you need any institute to train? But those who really need training are not the one who come up and say, this is the kind of job profiles for which I need training. How do you solve this dichotomy? One part of is entrepreneurship, but even the job role of a mechanic is different from the job role of a mechanic in a Maruti center.
Correct.
How do you train them?
Right.
That's a conundrum which we have not resolved yet.
Yeah, I'm Mudit Jain, a businessman. We have a factory in rural India. My question to any of the panelists are, especially Dr. Goel, there are no jobs in rural areas, sir. People are getting more qualified. There are no jobs. No factories are coming up. And people are getting more qualified. Worker wants his son to be a DME, diploma in engineering, if not an engineer. So people are getting overqualified for the same kind of job. At all levels, I find this happening, whether it's at the managerial level or even at the bottom level. So there's a scarcity of jobs per se. Would you agree, or what would you say?
So as I think I had also mentioned this before, I also gave an example that I'm not seeing that job scarcity is a problem at this point in time in the country. I think problem is the second part what you mentioned, and that I agree, that we have perhaps people who are overqualified on paper and they don't have skills. So there is a certificate which is becoming a problem on the way for these people to get a job. And I agree with Mr. Narayanan on that NSQF 10 level framework what we have in the country, if that can be implemented properly. The people who get this NSQF level 3 and level 4 certificate, if they are skilled well for that level, I think job per se I don't see is a dearth.
There was a question there. I'll take it.
Yes.
Hi,
Yes,
my name's Amisha. I work in education, actually. So my question is that if what we've spoken about is that we don't have people who are skilled for jobs, and particularly the soft skills. So these are transferable skills like communication, collaboration is what you spoke about. How do either higher education institutions influence that, going down into schools? And how do employers also influence that? Not in the sense of I'm going to train these people to hire them,
more like
but
a demand
as a collective.
From the system.
Yeah,
more like a demand
exactly.
From the system.
How do we generate a certain level of demand
Yeah.
that will influence schools to start changing?
It's a very, very interesting question.
In fact, that is my biggest grouse. In fact, the number one problem I see, and we talk about Germany, we talk about Australia, we talk about England, the ownership level that industry has over the education training system, we don't see in India. Unfortunately, how many corporate, including all of us here sitting, how much do we sponsor? Because the schools are from where we get our future resources. How much does the industry put itself at the center of these things? They are at the periphery finding faults. I'm not saying it is done deliberately, but we have not yet reached a stage where we actually adopt. In fact, we are doing a large project for DGT, Director General of Technology, which is the one who handles ITIs. And one of the things that we are trying to do is create industry circles in certain areas. That industry circle should adopt the ITIs in the region. And they should actually be a form of the management committee and tell them what is the kind of skills they require from these kids. Now, they can't reject after that, or they can't say these guys are useless. If they are a part of the ones who are... That should happen in a large scale, in my view. But for the other skills, the non-technical skills, I think the awareness has come. It is happening. It is happening, and even including many of the qualification packs, as they say, includes these things. That is, you are qualified to be a trainer only if you know, say, personal cleanliness. You are qualified to be a cook only when you know how to lay. So these things are all coming up. I can go skill-wise, but it takes time.
I'll share a quick anecdote. I was in Hyderabad last week addressing a CII conference, and I was talking about what my company does, where we enhance natural intelligence to sustain people in the age of AI, and the bureaucrats there. And the problem was soft skills was always said in a very soft voice. So, like soft skills. And the focus was more on the technical skills. So I think you're right, a mindset change has to come from a policy level as well, where NSDC, for example, is shameful that as a part of their index, they don't have collaboration, negotiation, common sense or, as a criteria, which is, I think, increasingly important.
What is happening is, just to very quickly explain, there are occupation standards. Occupation standards are individual occupation. Like, you're a fitter, you're a plumber, there's occupation standards. That gets into qualification packs, which is for a job.
Yeah.
Now, what's happening is there are multiple qualification packs. Some of them could be soft, will be hard on them. And this qualification pack now will include some of the soft skills as well. There is an serious attempt being made.
Okay.
So the qualification packs that are now approved for every job role, like if you are a hairdresser, which is, and beauty and wellness is a hugely popular sector where everybody wants to get skill, particularly women. And there you have introduced a lot of soft skills. And you're seeing that on the ground. I don't know. I would love to believe that it is happening on the ground.
Unfortunately not, especially in the work that we're doing. We're not seeing that at scale. We'll take one last question. Were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say that there are some and I don't know why this whole hard-soft business is a real fake. Spatial skills.
Yes.
Is that a hard, is that a soft? We don't know, but it's everywhere. You see, so much is now done on, I have to get from here to there, and I'm going to look at a, map, and sometimes when I'm driving, and that's how I have to get there. One of the skills that we absolutely don't have in our education system for sure is spatial skills. it's very clear that this delivery business is only going to increase.
Yeah.
And yet, we kind of, we are talking about, I think our discourse is all wrong. We have to talk about the nature of work and stop talking about jobs. There's plenty of work to be done in India, and that work is not going to be parceled in easy bits, for you to access. You've got to go and figure out what is the structure in which this can actually give you a livelihood.
Right.
And this can't start at when you've failed in 12th standard. It's got to be part of your DNA as you're growing up, both in the family and in the school.
Correct.
And I don't know, I think that we pay too much attention to the supply side and not on the demand side.
Absolutely.
The fact that nobody wants to do vocational skilling has to be really understood.
Yeah.
No matter how much skill India you do, if only 2.5 people out of 100 want it, then clearly we are not putting it out there. I don't know what Germany did 200 years ago for this to be as a high prestige thing. Or as whether you're doing vocational skilling or you're doing a university professor, you're going to earn perhaps the same thing or have the same value. It has to start
It's a societal thing. On the lighter side, we did a survey in rural Odisha as to why is it that this is not popular. The number one reason, this is particularly with boys, they said we don't get married if we are somebody who's done a vocational education. So even if it is a stupid degree, we are seen as somebody who's ready.
We'll take one last question from the audience. Yes.
Hi, Anna Bruni from the Confluencers. My question is, all of the panelists talked about the differences between the learning journey of the student, the availability of opportunities to use that learning, and what skills and the aspirations of the individual. And so there's this difference and this mismatch. And I'm just wondering, what are your views? Is the problem that we don't know what skills we should be training the next generation for? Or do we know what those skills are because we can forecast the system? And if so, what are those skills?
It is not I can't answer that in a digital fashion because the way things are changing, I don't think we have a complete hang of what's going to be, required tomorrow and day after tomorrow because things are changing. And that's not only in India. Across the globe, people have no big, clear idea that this is what is going to happen. But the fact is not that. That's like common. Are we making it aspirational? Even those that we know for a fact is required, which we are very clear. Like, for example, a building and construction. In fact, that's very strange, right? We did a survey, and there are many studies in this. The number one sector that needs a lot of skilled workers is building and construction. Now, how many youngsters do really want to get into that sector? It is counterintuitive, right? There is a lot of money there. There are people willing to pay. They need people. They need carpenters. They need barbenders. Nobody goes there. So somewhere, I would think from a basic societal aspiration, we have not got it right.
But just to it's a very important question that she's asked, that while we're constantly evolving as an industry, as an economy, obviously there has to be a forecast of ABC skills, vocational heart that are required so that we can backward fit the training ecosystem. So could you throw some light, either of you, on just to summarize, what those skills are? Apart, see, carpenter or infrastructure, etc., are very profession-specific skills. But we also spoke about how we need to become more intelligent, more emotionally intelligent, learn collaboration, negotiation, and so on. So, what are those vocational skills of the future, according to you, ma'am?
So, doing these large-scale surveys, you learn a lot, I think. One of the questions we were asking in that 14 to 18, and we were asking this everywhere. We were asking it to headmasters, to sarpanch, to grandparents. What should a kid at age 15 in India be like? And we got, regardless of rural, urban, and what kind of background, we got these two broad answers. अच्छा इंसान होना चाहिए and अच्छी नौकरी होनी चाहिए. अच्छा इंसान कैसे बनेगा is not clear. You somehow just become an अच्छा इंसान. There's no training program for अच्छा इंसान. So you have to somehow, when you press down, and after asking these questions for some time, I realized these are the wrong questions. The question we should have asked is, this village today needs what? this community needs what, and let's all close our eyes and think 10 years ahead and what are you going to need.
Absolutely.
And do we as a set of people who live here or are likely to live here have all that here, or where are we going to get it from?
Right.
And I think that's the kind of thing that we have to get into the habit of, thinking. Middle class people, as they are getting white hair, are starting to think, my children are in America, so mera kya hoga? I better move into, whatever retirement community, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking ahead. Right?
Yeah.
So why are we not doing this as a larger group?
Right.
I think these are the kinds of sort of shifts in mindset that are needed.
Yeah.
Then where will the skilling come from and what skill do we need can perhaps, be
I think that's a very, very valid suggestion. I'm going to take the opportunity now to summarize a very, very engaging panel, and I hope that three of them will be available for a few minutes after the conversation. I think the panel. So this was fortunately not like a Republic or Times Now panel, and we all spoke and actually agreed, which is very rare in discussions these days. Because I was softest, I was not like Arnab. No, so I think that we can all conclude that a strong mindset shift is required from all key stakeholders, whether it is the youth themselves, it is the academicians, or the policymakers and the employers, on actually what the skills of the future should be, and then backward fit the entire system. I think the very nature of qualifications and expectations have to evolve so as for companies to identify the right kind of talent for them. And I particularly appreciate what ma'am said, that if there are students who display the innate drive to do something, even if they're not from the formal education system, they need to be enabled and encouraged rather than belittled, which also happens, because for all the stories you've said, there are opposite stories of children who've displayed innate intelligence and passion but have been put down by their system, whether it's parents, families, schools, and so on. So I think this is a very uphill task for all of us here and the employers here, the academics here. But I think it's important to acknowledge that this is going to be a problem. And I often have nightmares to know, what if these millions of unemployable youth one day come to the streets? It is going to be dangerous. And India could either go, this could become a dividend for us, our demographic dividend, or it could be a massive threat to socioeconomic stability. So with this imminent danger that's going to face all of us, please go and enjoy your evening. Thank you.